Hello and welcome to Making Media Now, a filmmakers collaborative podcast. I'm your host, Michael Azevedo. On this episode, I'm joined by longtime friend of the podcast, Tim O'Donnell of Pixela Film, and by first-time guest, Mary Dague. Mary and Tim join me to talk about the just-completed film, The Last Yztari. This innovative and moving film tells the story of how after using her body as a shield to protect her unit from an IED in Iraq, Mary Dague is left medically retired, missing both arms from the elbow down. Many years after returning home, she finds a new place in online gaming communities as she adapts her controllers to work with her feet. With her active military husband readying to deploy again, Mary is faced with the trauma of the past and worry for her partner's yet-to-be-diagnosed PTSD. The film explores the liminal space between trauma and healing, and this world and a fantasy space where old wounds might present themselves as future insights or abilities. The film weaves observational documentary with an original generative AI system built from Mary's own fantasy novel. The novel itself was a secret only revealed to the filmmakers and Mary's husband after 7 years of writing. Here's the film's trailer.
Remember your training. Remember, you survived. You survived. You survived. Remember, that was you.
I'm here with Mary Dague. Tell me about you.
Well, I grew up in Montana. Enlisted in the Army in 2004. In 2007, I was deployed to Iraq, part of the Explosive Ordnance Disposal Corps. Got called out on a mission, a very large IED. I set it in the truck, and it started to rock.
I think, I've always been creative. Ever since I was little, I guess most important of all, I love a story.
Choose your characters. Choose your world. Choose your memories.
Oh shit. It does make me want to go upstairs right now and just pour into writing. My ex was like, oh, guys don't like girls that play video games. And I believed him because I was dumb and insecure. And James is a massive part of me coming out of that.
You need anything else?
More time? As a tech, I'm jealous. I don't like watching my people go without me. As a wife, it just hurts. I really miss him.
One thing I've noticed is the gaming community itself, as a whole, has probably been the most easy to integrate with. It's just such a diverse and accepting group.
Hi, I just wanted to say, you said you wanted to be a superhero when you grow up. I think you made it.
We survive in fragments, each piece forgetting it was ever whole. We weren't meant to be alone.
Making Media Now is sponsored by Filmmakers Collaborative, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting media makers from across the creative spectrum. From providing fiscal sponsorship to presenting an array of informative and educational programs, Filmmakers Collaborative supports creatives at every step in their journey. To learn more, visit filmmakerscollab.org. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please do like, share, leave a review. Now on to my conversation with Tim O'Donnell and Mary Dague. Tim O'Donnell and Mary Dague, welcome to Making Media Now.
Thanks so much for having us.
Tim, I should say to you, welcome back. I think you now have the distinction of being the most returned guest to Making Media Now. I'm going to say this is your third appearance. Could be your fourth. But every time you come, you're here for a good reason, and you're here for a worthwhile reason. And today, we're talking about a film that you and your partners at Pixela Film have just completed called The Last Yztari. And Mary, if I mispronounce that name, you got to let me know. And essentially, you're telling Mary's story. So let's first talk about the story. As you guys have gone through the filmmaking process and shown various cuts of the film to various audiences, how have you described the plot of the film most succinctly? And either one of you can take that first.
Yeah, maybe if it's okay, Mary, I'll explain a little bit, and then I'd love to get your perspective because it's been, next year will be 8 years that we've been working on this project together. So, a good 7.5 years in, we're ready to now get it ready for festivals. So, it's the end of 2025 next year. We'll be at film festivals, and it's super excited to share it. We just finished it, but I think it's a interesting story, because often with documentaries, you start one place and you end in a very different place, and that's definitely the story here. Where I'd known Mary for a very long time. I actually got to work with Mary on a different documentary called Not a War Story, and that's how we kind of initially met, and we've just remained friends for a while. And I had to ask Mary. There was a lot of things happening in Mary and her husband James's life, and at some point, about 7.5 years ago, I said, "Hey, I think I need to start, documenting and telling your story." And there's been so much that has happened since that moment. But even going back to that moment, Mary, what was it like for you to have somebody that say, "Hey, I think I want to make a film about you"? Curious if that was a tough question to answer.
Yeah, it was intimidating. Well, when you asked me at the time, I wasn't very comfortable on camera at all. It took a few years of like streaming, and then of course Not a War Story and Range 15 really kind of helped with that nervousness, I guess, the anxiety of being on film.
Yeah.
But also I struggled with it a lot because I don't know, to me it's life. And I feel it's hard for me to feel like my life is interesting enough for other people to want to consume in a form of media.
So you
Yeah,
you,
and I
you
feel
each
like
have referenced you
yeah.
each have referenced, Tim, your prior film, Not a War Story, but Mary, you very much have a war story. And that's kind of the way in on the film. So share with our listeners what your war story was, please.
Hmm. Um, well, the short, in a nutshell version, I joined the Army in 2004, went into EOD, which is Explosive Ordnance Disposal. It's essentially the bomb squad of the military. Deployed about a year after I joined to Iraq. My team and I ran, tons of missions. By the time I got injured, my team leader said our final count was over 365 incidents, IEDs, caches, post blasts, that sort of thing. So we were responding a lot. It was a very, very heavy year, and one place we responded to pretty much weekly, if not a couple times a week, was this children's school in Abu Ghraib, and it was to the point where we saw the coordinates on the 9 line, like, oh, they got an IED at the school again. And across the street from the school was these housing projects, like apartments. We called them the Taliban apartments because they would put IEDs in the school. We would respond. We would line up in the parking lot essentially, or on the road. But it's very small, very compact area. And then as we were working on whatever device they had implanted or emplaced, the Taliban would ambush us from the apartments. It was kind of like clockwork. Very few times we did not get ambushed. And this was one of those times. The Iraqi army called us. They had an IED that they had found way out in sector somewhere, and for whatever reason, we're just driving it around with it in their Humvees.
And an IED is an improvised explosive
Sorry.
device. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, basically a homemade bomb, whatever they can find or have on hand at the time.
Sure.
Um,
And this is 2007, around the time of the surge in Iraq.
the surge was more 2001 and then a second in 2003.
Okay.
2007 was very hot though.
Okay.
It was a very high casualty year. Um, a lot of incidents. But we instructed the Iraqi army to take the device to an Iraqi COP, a little combat outpost that was attached to our base. So we actually didn't even have to leave the base to go there, and they had a disposal site. So it would have been safe for them to drive in, put it down like just in the dirt, because that was basically the base was a range and we could have disposed of it. But instead, they brought it to the school. So they put it in that little parking lot that was in between the school and the apartments. So we got there. We all kind of thought it was a trap because this was kind of when blue on green was happening a lot, where our allies, our foreign allies, were killing American soldiers. So it was shady, from the get go.
They were killing
But
American soldiers by design. That was their objective.
Yes. You never knew who it was going to be, but we did have an EOD tech that got, shot in the head by an Afghanistan police officer while they were on an mission. And there were several incidents like that, not just in EOD, but within the service. So we were on edge, as you normally are. But again, it was kind of normal, for war.
Yeah.
So we got there. I was being trained as a team leader at the time. One of the reasons I was studying for the E5 board to become a sergeant. I had been pushing it off for quite a while, but I got really sick of reading Army regulations. So I was like, yes, I will absolutely go on a mission. So we went. It seemed fairly straightforward, except for where they put the device. We had to serpentine into the parking lot, like in through the building. So there was no fast egress for us, which it kind of makes you feel even more on edge, and it puts your whole convoy in a box, which is very, very bad.
Yep.
So my team leader went down first, and then he called me down, and I would run the problem. And when he called me down, I couldn't hear him because we had all of our engines were running. We've got the tall buildings, so they're just reverberating sound. So he's trying to yell something to me, and I can't hear him. So I took my my earplugs out. I set them on the seat, and he's like, "Bring me trash bags." And I was like, "Okay." So I grabbed him trash bags, walked down to him, and the IED was one of their light poles they had cut down and cut into sections, probably 2.5, 3 foot long sections. And their light poles were hollow metal, like steel. And then at the bottom, they put this big base plate on it and then fed a blasting cap up through a hole, put a lug nut on that, and then welded the lug nut into place so we couldn't pull the blasting cap out through the bottom. We had to dig down into it. So they had a homemade explosive that my team leader and I were just digging out with our hands, putting into this trash bag. I brought that back up to Mick, my teammate. He was his position at the time was what we call trunk monkey, which he's in the back of the truck. He's doing all of the shot prep. He's running the robot. He mans the gun when we're actively moving in the convoy. I was driver and learning, or I guess going through my team leader certs as we went on the missions. So I bring the explosives back up to Mick. I went back down. By this point, Bruce, my team leader, had gotten the cap out. So he gave that to me. I brought it back up to Mick to put in the cap pig, which is just a safe container that if it goes off, we won't even know until we open it. It's Schrodinger's cap in there. And then I went back down, grabbed the device itself, threw it up on my shoulder, and I was walking back. And I'm joking with our security guys because we've been working together for about a year now.
Okay.
We've got a pretty good rapport. And they were making fun of Mick because he was a big dude. He's jacked. You don't have much to do in
in war except work out. So that's basically what he did. So he's this just meathead, and there I was, all of like 130 pounds, carrying this big device. And so they're making fun of Mick, like, you're gonna let that little girl carry that big bomb? And I'm like, oh, F all of you. But I brought it back to the truck, and I laid it down in the back, and I went to adjust my weapon because it had come up over my collar when I had flung the device up onto my shoulder. It like swung around. So I turn around and I adjust my weapon, and I look back up, and the device was just kind of rocking. And the last solid memory I have before it all gets jumbled was me like, no. So I hugged the device. It detonated. We did not know at the time that it had a very sensitive kicker charge in the bottom of it. And that's just an extra explosives that they'll put in to aid the cap in setting off their homemade explosives, because they're not always the most reliable. So it detonated. When it did, it sympathetically detonated the bag of explosives that I had given to Mick. That blast channeled both into me and out through the doors of the truck and out through the turret. So it threw me faster than the frag could shred me. It still got me a little bit. I took some frag to the face, obviously explosively amputated both of my arms. Although they did say my left was hanging on for a minute. It was kind of like a stripped hot wing. But my right was just gone. And then my hand was just there. But I got really lucky in that it basically delivered me to my medic. It was like, here's your patient. Like threw me right into his truck, ripped my helmet off, threw it over the gunner. Mick flew out of the truck after me. It rang his bell, but he got to me and was calling for a medic and had a tourniquet on my arm before I even started to like mute the sound. From my perspective, everything got very, very, very loud, but also very quiet. I liken it to like being inside of a giant church bell while they're ringing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can feel the noise, but you can't hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I could taste copper. I knew I was concussed because everything was slowing down. I recognized that I was going into an adrenaline rush. And I was telling myself, like, it just rung my bell. It hit me good, but I'm fine. Like I'm still breathing. I'm still here. And I kept hearing this woman like screaming and screaming, and it seemed like going forever. And I remember like actually thinking, someone shut that B word up. And I hit the Humvee, and it like knocked the wind back into me, and I took this big breath, and the screaming stopped, and I was like, oh, that was me.
That was you. Yeah. So this incident, this horrific incident that you're describing is depicted quite vividly in the film. Tim, can you talk to me a little bit about how you and John Mercer, your partner, in conversation with Mary, went about essentially, in a sense, recreating that event, and so sort of some of the both technical considerations you wanted to make, but also the considerations as a filmmaker who wasn't there firsthand. Essentially, you're recreating somebody's recollection of an event.
First off, like, for Mary to trust us means the world, because what she just depicted is, it's crazy. It's crazy that Mary has gone through this and has the attitude that she has and does all the things that one does after something like this, because 99.9% of us would have maybe a very different outcome, and it takes somebody like Mary, and then hopefully this story will help inspire others that maybe have various challenges. It doesn't have to mean losing limbs, but first off, you just heard the war story, right? The goal of this film is to include that and honor that. But folks that get to watch this film see much more than Mary's explosion story.
Right.
And it was important to really, we waited a good 4-ish years before really diving into that story, even though we know it, and there were moments on camera where we talk about it a little bit, but the sit down interview that you see in the film was about approximately 4 years in, because we really, we want trust, and we want to make sure we tell it, we give it justice. But the film really focuses a lot more on Mary as a gamer. She's a video gamer. She plays, games with her feet. She's on Twitch. And this idea of a storyteller, and I think as the film evolves, you learn more and more about Mary as a writer. And she's, writing this very fantastical sci-fi novel, or it's really a series of novels, and you get more and more into that. But we also wanted to make sure we did the story justice. And earlier I mentioned how it's been an evolution, and when we started it, the focus was really on Mary and her story. And as each year progressed within the film, we learned more and more. And I'll jump to the end. In the past 9 months or so of making of this film, the film has changed dramatically because Mary entrusted us with the sci-fi novel, and we actually took that and started including it in the film. So you get to know Mary's characters that she's writing about, her world, and it's weaving in and out of the film. And meanwhile, at Pixela, we developed our own AI video generative approach. So using generative video, maybe in a different way, using footage that we took to then influence some of the images that you see. And so when Mary is telling her story of getting blown up and losing limbs, we got to use some of that tech, some of that AI generative video technology to sort of amplify that story and bring you there and see some of those things. And the sound design as well sort of wraps around Mary's voice. It was, again, going back, it's quite an honor to be able to work with Mary and tell her story and hopefully do it justice.
Yeah, and before we move on from the event itself, Mary, I just had a question around in being an ordnance disposal tech. Was that a task that was appealing to you, and you essentially sought it out, or was it assigned to you and you developed the skill set?
No, so when I joined the Army, I actually intended on either going CID, the Criminal Investigation Division, or becoming military intelligence. My scores were high enough that I could pretty much pick whatever I wanted to do. My dad was a cop, and I always, I watched a lot of cop shows, and I had a lot of exposure to the sheriff's office. And so I got really into forensics. I loved science, and I wanted to be an investigator. And, at 19, I thought that that's the route I would have to take.
Yep.
So when I joined, that was my intention. But when I got to MEPS, they didn't have slots for those jobs for me.
Okay.
So they kind of went down the list of jobs they did have, and they got to explosive ordnance disposal. And I was like, what's that? Like the bomb squad? And the guy got all like uppity with me. He's like, no, it's explosive ordnance disposal. It's the bomb squad, dude. But I remember going like, do you have like a video or something I could watch to get an idea of what it's like? And they were like, yeah. And they showed me, their military, marketing video,
Sure.
I guess,
Yeah.
on EOD. And it was a bit cheesy, as you'd assume it would be. But you see the guy in the bomb suit, and he's walking out working on IEDs, and they've got all this like technical stuff in the background. And I was like, you know what? That would be awesome. The job changes. It's challenging. I'm never going to not be interested because my life is on the line. Other people's lives are on the line. So I'll be invested the entire time. It's not going to be some job at a desk, which was my biggest fear, was getting stuck in an office for the Army.
Yeah.
And EOD kind of checked all of my boxes, even though I didn't even really know it existed when I joined. But once I got into it, once I got through the school, probably halfway through phase 2 of EOD school in Florida, was when I was like, this is it.
this is what I want to be when I grow up. Like it's this until death. And I still have no plan now because that was it. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna die being a bomb tech. And what, 35? That's as far as my plan has to go. But here I am, survived. The consequences of survival.
So Tim had just mentioned, you being a gamer and you being a writer. Tell me a little bit about your involvement in both gaming and writing pre-Army experience, and then what each of those interests and passions, what roles they played in aiding your personal recovery.
Oh yeah. So I grew up, in a small town in Montana. So about 8 months out of the year, if you're not in a sport in school, there's not a lot to do. You can hunt, you can ski, but there's not a lot. So I played a lot of video games. That was like my dad and my thing was we'd play a lot of video games, and I read all the time.
Yeah.
If I wasn't playing a video game or outside, swinging from our willow tree, like, well, George of the Jungle, not really Tarzan. I I was reading or playing a video game. That was just my thing.
Was there a relationship genre-wise in terms of what you read and the types of games you played?
Kind of. I dabbled in a little bit of everything, early on, because you don't really know what you really love as a kid until you've experienced a bunch. So I read through like every Goosebump novel that ever existed. It got to the point where the county library, I didn't even have to like punch my library card anymore. I would just come back in every 3 days and get another stack of books. But I really loved mystery and horror to begin with, and that kind of morphed into sci-fi and fantasy.
Okay.
It's almost always been fiction. I've read a few biographies or true stories.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, for me, reading in video games, it's escapism.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times I'm doing it because I don't want to acknowledge the real world for an hour or two.
Yeah,
I just want to take myself out of it.
Yep.
And that was always kind of the theme, was like something that was fantastic, or especially if it allowed me to like delve into some sort of a superhero type fantasy. So that was like a huge thing for me. And I actually got a little bit away from video games when I first joined the Army. For the dumbest reason. I had a boyfriend who told me that guys don't like girls who play video games. And I was like, so I kind of hid that part until we got to Iraq and the guys were having Halo tournaments. And I was like,
hey, that guy was wrong.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was so wrong.
He was so wrong.
I think he was just jealous because I was better than him.
Yeah.
But in Iraq was when, all of me really shined. I not necessarily trying to toot my own horn, but I loved being a bomb tech. I was really good at it. And when you're deployed, that's all you're doing. Like, you got to write the report every now and again. You got to do, some stupid detail you don't really want to do. But for the most part, we were just doing the job, and it was great. You had a purpose, and it also doubled as a passion, which was amazing. And then in my downtime, I was either working out, playing video games, or reading. So, combat was awesome in that aspect, in that simplicity.
Mm-hmm. And how did the idea and sort of the whole visual world that you created for the Last Yztari come to be, and the protagonist in the game? Am I correct in saying that she is essentially an avatar for you?
Actually, no.
Okay.
She has pieces of me.
Okay.
But actually, I kind of distributed different parts of my personality through.
And tell us about
characters.
who she is, first of all.
Oh, sorry, Zia. Yes.
Yeah, Zia. Yes.
So within the story, Zia is this woman who's been growing up in what is basically, it's called the Sister Sanctuary, but it's basically an all-woman village that has, existed for centuries, but it's a safe haven for women who are either escaping or just never really grew up. This is like on the heels of a big human trafficking era within this world. There's been a lot of war.
And this world you're referencing is one that you've created.
Yes, completely different solar system from ours. They even their sun is essentially dying. They sent out arcs thousands of years ago to go find a more habitable planet, but they ended up leaving half of the population behind. When they did that to protect the population, because they ended up taking not all, but most of the natural resources, they created the Yztari to protect the people. Like that was their ultimate goal. So they were constructs, human, but lab created. And they were created with a direct AI neural interface chip, so Danny. And that was intended to kind of be a program chip, basically setting right and left limits for the Yztari, so they couldn't become all powerful. They couldn't breed and take over and become the next evolution of mankind.
And how
Essentially,
over
they
how
had the
long a
same.
period of time, over how long a period of time are you building this world and sort of the rules within this world, the relationships
Oh,
within this world in your head? And when does it begin to feel to you like something that, okay, I got to take this out of my head and either put it on the page or the screen, or to essentially visualize it via characters in a video game world?
it was a couple years. It weirdly, and I understand it now, but at the time I didn't. It started when I started writing the autobiography. Because I've been asked to do that by several people, and I hated it. I hated every second of it. Um, and like I tried so many different methods. I tried just writing everything I could think of down. I
Did you hate it
tried,
because it had to be about you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It felt it felt like I was just fluffing myself, you know, all the time, and even like I would get pushback on the hard parts of my life where I was kind of a dick. And they were like, "Oh, you shouldn't put that in the book." I'm like, "No, I really should, because people should not think that I'm some saint who's never made a mistake."
Right, right. Yeah. Good for
But
you.
I just didn't like the whole process. And also there were times where I was like, I'm reading things that I've written about myself and they are true. And I'd taken out all the fluffy descriptors even, and I was still like, this is really hard to believe.
Hmm.
It would be something that if I read it about somebody else, I'd be like, yeah, this is a bunch of BS. I think this is a big fish story over here. Like, um, it it just felt like so much, and it kind of made me go to this dark place too, where it was like, this is I really, man, that's traumatizing. If
Yeah,
I
it's
was
like it's
watching
like
this,
an
I would cry.
excavation process.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you're digging into stuff that had long since buried, you didn't really want to revisit. And about that time I started dreaming about Zia. And I'm also, this is weird, I'm a lucid dreamer.
Okay.
Ever since I was a kid, if I have like a nightmare or something, I just kind of I change the dream. Well, I started dreaming about Zia, and I was writing about all of the things I'd gone through, and all of a sudden, Zia is going through these things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm changing it in my dreams. I'm all of a sudden, she loses an arm, but she comes back from it. She gets saved, she comes back, she's the hero of the day. And then I started dreaming about other characters, and I was putting bits of myself into them as well.
So, as a lucid dreamer, and this process is taking place, do you come to recognize this lucid dreaming as kind of messages from, instruction from your subconscious, or just your subconscious kind of dropping these little images and somewhat formed people, I guess. I hesitate to use the word, that you're taking and saying, all right, well, the lucid dreaming is going to take me this far, and then my imagination will take us the next way. And does it become all interwoven?
Yeah, so it started off as kind of it was just this kind of interesting concept I had. It was little bits and pieces. My husband and I we walk at night, especially when we lived in Florida. You have to walk at night because it's just hot all the time. And so I would just rattle off about these dreams I was having and the concept and everything, and it started to kind of form this whole world. And I actually remember telling him, like, I would rather write about my life through these characters.
Okay.
It's easier when I can distribute the stories through them.
Yeah.
And explain, the mindset, because it's hard to explain to people that, no, I didn't cry when I got my arms blown off, but if you show me those stupid Sarah McLachlan ASPCA commercials, I am a bucket of tears, man.
Yeah. Emotional triggers are difficult to pin down sometimes, huh?
Exactly. But it did it became this way of me to tell my story that wasn't so personal. It wasn't just me.
Tim, when you are beginning to you meet Mary and then you begin to learn more of her story, how far along in your relationship with Mary do you become aware of her life as a writer, her life as a gamer who's incorporating writing into the creation of these characters, and as a storyteller? What kind of a challenge did you and John set for yourself in saying, okay, so here's the multi-levels of challenge we have here. We have an individual who's trying to interpret her own dreams to create a reality that feels like more of a comfortable conduit for her experience. I got to take all of that, create visuals, wrap it around for people who have never heard about Mary, perhaps don't know squat about gaming, and make it sort of a palatable, which you have done, and seamless film.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, I think it's an evolution. The filmmaking, especially with the story, we didn't know about the writing that Mary was doing up until about 9 to 12 months ago, when Mary trusted us and revealed that she'd been secretly writing this sci-fi, series.
So up until that period of time,
there was no inclusion of it in the film.
So it was a very different film.
It was, and there was a lot of other things that we were experimenting and working with visually to kind of show. But when that happened, it really made so much sense. We knew that Mary was writing something. She was very reluctant to talk about it. And I think over time, I think maybe we were the fourth people ever to get access to the writing. Is that right, Mary? There's like so James had seen a little bit of it, but even James
is your husband.
Yeah, he hasn't seen as much as they have.
Yeah, and it's a lot. I mean, and I understand too, Mary, because as a filmmaker, it's really tough to get to that moment where you're ready to have other people look at your work. And so it was a big honor to be like, wow. And I think initially we just found that, wow, this is very much a part of Mary. And even just to back up, as you get to know Mary and James, they don't deserve a traditional film. And we knew that right away. Not that we have to make something weird to make it weird for weird's sake. It was just, it felt weird to maybe just have a traditional interview-driven classic documentary about people that are just extraordinary. They're both heavily into gaming in the gaming community. They're obviously very important to the veteran community. James, during most of the filming, was active duty, same exact job, bomb tech. He's now since retired, and you get to know that in the film. But there's just so much to this cool love story. This, I hate to say it, nerdy love story maybe. And And when the writing came around, this is the perfect vehicle for us to explore and push the boundaries of what this couple deserves, for storytelling. And then knowing that we knew that the Mary's story was within these characters, all these different characters, and there's a lot there. I mean, I think hopefully when you watch the film and you learn about this and how Mary is processed and carried on through storytelling, that there's really an importance there. But we knew we wanted to show her visually with Zia. That was the character that maybe lined up the most for an audience to understand. And then the other characters look very different, but they all have various pieces of her or people that she loves or people in her world are also within those characters.
So as we see Zia, in your film, talk to me, Mary and Tim, about the process that you had to go through to come to alignment. There's a sequence, I'm assuming that's Sam, your co-director and editor, who's talking with Mary, and essentially it's almost it reminded me of times where I've done creative pitches and you bring in like mood boards, and the client says, "No, not that. Okay, a little of that and a little of this and a little of that." It felt like that was the way this persona was coming together visually. And Mary, did you feel entering that process like you had Zia down to the most minute molecule on her body as to what she looked like, or was it sort of amorphous, and these creative geniuses, Tim and company, helped you zero in on what she actually would look like?
So Zia in the story actually looks way different from the documentary.
Oh, okay.
So Zia obviously in the documentary looks like me.
Yeah.
In the series, she's actually got long fire engine red hair. It's very like curly. She's slightly taller than me, more athletic, more limber, but still a big klutz. Like I gave her that part of me. It's like, you're gonna be a badass. You're gonna trip all the time. But she's very solid in my head and what she looks like.
So how did she tell me
same with
about that
Matt.
sort of that evolution as she goes from looking like that, emerging from your brain and imagination to what she looks like in the film?
So we sat down, and Sam and I had quite a few discussions about it. And there was kind of a bit of compromising, because they explained to me what they wanted to do with the film, and how they wanted to incorporate Zia. And so there were some tweaks that had to be made for that, which was kind of nerve-wracking, but at the same time, like I can separate it in my head where it's like, oh, it's not changing the story that I'm writing.
Yep.
It's just adapting it, or using it as a metaphorical vehicle. So I was okay with it.
So your comfort level with Zia coming to very closely resemble you, that was something that grew over time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it had to. If he had just told me like right off the bat, I would have been like, absolutely not. How dare you do that to my baby?
And Tim, why was that so important for you guys, that there was this visual relationship between Mary and the Zia character?
Yeah, we knew it would be tough for audiences to really grasp what was happening, especially the style of filmmaking that we typically do, where, oftentimes we'll tell a story for sure, and, you hear the information, but you'll kind of get pulled through this longer process, and oftentimes you might not fully understand what's happening, sort of the mystery of like, ooh, what's this? What's this whole other world? There's some excitement in there. And so we knew visually we needed a connection between the two. And there was a lot of, honestly, like Mary being willing to give on various parts of her writing, because we tried to treat it like an adaptation, right? It's like there's a book written and there's a film made, and oftentimes that film is not going to have every bit of the book, or not have a huge chunk of it. In particular, we knew, I mean, we're getting 20-30% of the film is the inclusion of this, so we're not really going to be able to scratch the surface too much. But hopefully you get to meet the characters and understand why it's important that we included it. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth. Sam Oldmeadow, the co-director and editor, he had long discussions with Mary, through Discord, and
He flew all
we
the way
kind
out
of
here.
yeah, we came down a few times, and really, it was almost outside of the documentary filming. It was more like, let's meet about the making of this other thing.
Yeah.
And you also get to see this, like, you kind of break the wall in the film where you see the filmmakers talking to Mary, and you see on screen things changing as we're talking about them visually. So
Here's a question
yeah.
from someone who is a non-gamer. I'm aware my son was a gamer for a while, and so I've watched him play them, and I find them really interesting, sort of visually, but I've never really, participated in that. What was the technique that Sam used, right? How did that differ from maybe how Zia would be represented within a video game?
In an ideal setting, if this were like adapted into a video game, I would want the character to be customizable. I would want people to be able to put themselves into an Yztari and make them look how they want and play through it, like play through the game as themselves with all these, these powers, making their own choices.
Okay.
Because that's
And
that's pretty much
the,
what I go for in games is
and
the
in
story.
the format that Sam employs, it's almost more, and Tim, correct me when I'm wrong here, because inevitably I will be. It's almost more like a something was storyboarded, and you, in a way, animated it. Would that be accurate,
Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, like
So it had
the
very set
process.
rules, I guess I'm saying, right? It
Yeah.
had very set rules that the character is going to move this way, is going to, I mean, it's an understatement to say how lifelike it is. It's
Creepy.
Yeah, I mean,
it's creepy how
it's
close it is.
and what an experience to like fly down and be like, hey, here's your writing come to life, and it looks
oh, and by
like
the
you,
way, it's you.
and it's yeah. And by the way, so a lot there. But yeah, it's even evolved, right? Like the last year, AI video generative tools have changed. We kind of have our own tool that we're using, so it's
So
it's
let's
a bit
we need to
different in some ways.
deconstruct that for the uninitiated listening, me
Yeah,
among them.
yeah.
AI video generative. So like a lot of times, particularly when I'm having conversations with with filmmakers or people who just love films, as soon as the words AI comes in, a certain preconceived notion arrives that, oh,
Mm.
it's just AI. It's not real art. It's not real creation. You just basically kicked a lot of people out of their employment. Good work, pal. But this is very
Yeah.
different.
I think too, Mary's writing is working around AI, right? Like her characters, there's this whole tech revolution, these, cyber warriors, protectors. So it made sense for us
It's
to maybe
essentially
use
Mary's
that
writing is essentially the
technology.
DNA of the AI.
Yeah, yeah. And so like for us, we've have very upfront conversations within the film. You understand, we are using this sort of AI technology. And hopefully we're doing it in a way that's a bit different than others, on the back end. There's some code that's written. There's, different things that are kind of connected on the back end. There's visuals that we record that then get, plugged in. But it's also a long process. As quick as some of the chat GPT stuff can be,
Yeah.
the visuals that you're seeing did take quite a long time to develop. And it was a process, and the tech has changed. From the beginning of this year, the visuals look very different to where they are now. And it was just a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of tweaking. It doesn't come out right the first get go, and I think also just us kind of forcing that time and usage of the tool that we're working with. allowed for what you're able to see, so it's pretty complex. And there's audio too. We took a lot of audio from both Mary and James, and then use that to some of the things that Zia is saying back. That's all also generative as well.
What about the female voice in the
Yeah,
game that you show?
Danny, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, Danny is
Danny is essentially the consciousness, I guess, of this world, right? It is the epicenter of this neural network.
Yes.
Okay.
Danny is the AI that controls the Yztari and, well, I guess moderates them. But it's hard to describe succinctly, but it's basically a hive mind. It separates itself, partitions itself off into these other Yztari, and then once they die, it basically brings all of that information back to its center and is redistributed through the following generations. But it learns and grows, and over time develops a personality. At one point, it even goes insane because it's left alone for so long, and then is found and brought back out. So it was a big process with the AI, and how it developed throughout the story, and then seeing how Tim and Sam used it. It was scary at first for me because I too am of the mind of like, I'm a little bit tepid about AI.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, I absolutely know it's going to be used for nefarious reasons at some point.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. If there's a buck to be made.
Exactly. And I also, as a writer and somebody who's creating a story, I do have a healthy fear of it being essentially stolen and reused in some AI generative form.
Did Danny have a quote unquote voice in your mind? And did that voice have a sound?
Yes. So there's actually several. It's different for each Yztari. They basically Danny models after what works best for its host.
Okay.
Because they have a very symbiotic relationship.
That's really interesting you
So
say that, because when I was first hearing it, my first thinking was, oh, Mary's doing the narration essentially. So not only did I look at Zia and immediately think of you, when I heard Danny, I thought of you. So
oh, that's awesome.
mission accomplished, Tim.
Yeah, and it's not to go off track here, but has anybody seen the show Pluribus on
Yes.
Apple TV?
Yes.
It's while this, it's only episode 4, I think, Mary. There's qualities of your writing that I think are in there
Really?
conceptually, and it's the writers of Breaking Bad, so not bad, Mary.
Oh, awesome! I'm gonna have to look it up.
And maybe they stole your work, and here we are
I
talking
knew it.
about
I see you put it on the
Yes.
Google Drive.
You should get a royalty check any minute now. But yeah, no, Danny was also like, as Mary talks about, it's so unique, it's so interesting. We knew that Danny was going to be a part of this film, and
is Danny a
in some
synthetic
ways,
voice?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fully like an agent that we created. And then but we knew that was going to be sort of the storyteller. So it's really interesting. Obviously it's Mary's writing and Mary's creation. The storytelling, the storyteller, the narrator, is partially Danny. And we thought that was important. And there's a little interaction between Danny, Zia, and Mary at times within the film. We wanted to explore that kind of, connection.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting. Every time I have a
porch.
conversation with filmmakers about a film, with this podcast is audio only, so there's a sort of a challenge right there. And I always hope it's an enticement. I feel like the bar is even higher with this, because we're describing Mary's real life story, and we're describing the manifestations of it that filter through her brain onto the page and then over to you, Tim, and Sam. So it's multiple levels kind of interpretation, all of which adds up for me to say to people that when this film does become available out in the world, do yourselves a favor and go and see it, seek it out and find it. I did want to ask you, Mary, about there's a segment in the film where you're at a conference of sorts. It sort of had the feel of like a Comic-Con kind of a thing for me.
Oh yeah, that's
Um,
probably PAX.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
So tell me what the what was the theme of that gathering?
PAX is the Penny Arcade Expose, so it's a big gaming convention, but a lot of like tabletop RPGs, role playing games,
Okay,
a lot of card games. So you'll get like a lot of people who play Magic the Gathering, or there's like Pokemon battles,
okay.
but there's a big video game portion to it, and that I think that was the first time we'd ever been to the Boston one. PAX East, I think it's called. Um,
Yeah.
which was it was awesome. I first of all I just love Boston. Great town.
And so the
Um,
people who are meeting you at that conference, they're really like you're a celebrity at that conference. They really love meeting you. What of your work would they have been familiar with in that venue?
that honestly baffled me. I did not know. um, some of them knew me from the military,
Okay, yeah,
from just military circles. Some of them knew me from Range 15, or Not a War Story.
okay,
And Range 15 was the veteran made and produced movie that we did. That's kind of a it's a Bruce Campbell-esque film, like in that same style of humor and
yes,
comedy.
mm-hmm.
And so I was actually surprised that anybody at a Comic-Con or a PAX had seen it. Um, but yeah, and then I do some charity work for veterans charities. One of them was stackup.org, and we were working with them quite a bit at PAX, and that was some of the people that you see in the film are part of Stack Up, or were at the time. And so they were people that I'd interacted with doing different charity events, and then you see them again, like, "Hey, buddy!"
Does Zia still visit you in your lucid dreaming?
Oh yeah,
Does she look different in the dreams? Does she look closer to the Zia in the documentary versus the Zia that was in your mind prior to?
there's been a couple times where
Yeah.
all of a sudden she's got purple hair or a mohawk, and I'm like, "Girl, what are you doing? That's not you."
We're influencing your dreams. Oh no. Yeah.
Now it's
I was
become
wondering about
Inception.
that too.
Right?
Yeah.
Tim, talk to me about how this film, where this film fits into sort of the collection of films that you and John
Yeah.
Mercer have been making over the last 15 years or so. Because,
Yeah.
as someone who's familiar with your work, I can pull out some thematics, but, that's just one
Yeah.
person's assessment. But let's hear it from you.
Yeah, it's the best film we've ever made. That's, like a very
That's how it
comfortable
fits
saying
in.
it. I do. I feel very confident that this is the most this is our eighth feature. It overlaps in particular with my dad's film. I get to make a film about my dad called The House We Lived In. It's on PBS now for free. You can check it out. It also involves dreams, where my dad lost all these memories and gets them back in the form of dreams. So we have a lot of films that kind of like go in and out of the conscious subconscious, I think. But I think this film, it's the trust that we have with Mary and James is huge. Like, we don't have a film without that, like, collaboration and partnership. But then on top of it, being able to quote unquote play in be able to use different tools that typically most films don't get to use, and to really make a film within a film. So yeah, I think you get to know Mary, you get to know the love story, you get to know all these things, but hopefully you get to kind of dive deep and go into the subconscious world of like how we survive. Mary's a survivor in every single version of the word, and you'll get to know more of her story in the film, of all the things she's survived. But her survival maybe is also through how she's processed, and that is rich storytelling.
Yeah.
So a huge task for us, because we're trying to lay that out. But yeah, no, it's hopefully visually, it's one of the more different films, documentary films you'll ever get to see visually. We've definitely it's a quote unquote hybrid film because you have this inclusion of a sci-fi story, AI, it dips in and out, so you get this hybrid experience. And ultimately, it all hopefully goes back to getting to know this amazing veteran, getting to know this creative mind, and dig deep and dive deep with Mary throughout her journey.
So what does 2026 entail for the film? And then Mary, what does 2026 entail for your ongoing creative work? So Tim, talk to us about what how you plan to bring this film out into the world.
Yeah, we got lots of great things in store. So the film will be available at film festivals in early 2026. We got some really exciting festivals coming up. And then on top of it, we'll do an impact campaign where it's almost like a grassroots screening tour, right? Where we'll be, go into various cities, screening, doing talkbacks as well, where we'll have, the filmmaking team, Mary and James there. We've got a few potential big, massive partners, some organizations that have, places in every major city in the US. So there'll be a big tour, and then distribution most likely will happen in 2027 or at the end of 2026 in terms of Apple TV and Amazon and those other platforms. All that, changes as the festival kind of circuit goes. But yeah, this film will have a long life for sure. I don't think this is a film that will be at a couple festivals and that's it. I think Mary and James are going to be pretty busy the next 2-3 years with this film. So
at the end of the film, Mary, it does promise a creative deliverable from you in 2026. How's that coming? And tell us what it's going to be.
It's so it'll be the first book. I'm probably 60% done with it. I still have to go through the big editing phase, and there's still a couple bigger parts that I have to finish up because the concept is there, but they're not where I want them to be yet.
Yep.
And Tim can tell you, I'm nervous about sharing it. It's scary. Like it's weird. It's easier to tell the story of getting blown up than it is to be like, I wrote this book. Judge
Oh
it.
my gosh. that is so telling, isn't it? Well, it reminds me of when people are asked about their fears. Like they're like public speaking is number one and like dying is number two.
Yeah. It's so weird. Like public speaking was scary. It was really scary at first. I still get nervous.
Yeah.
But my husband could tell you, he would put his hand on my back. Normally he would be standing up there with me. And for the first few times he'd have his hand on my back and he'd just be like, you're shaking like a leaf. I'm like, can they see it? I'm like, no. Okay, we're fine then. I can fake it. But I would rather disarm bombs.
You would rather disarm bombs. Okay. Well, Tim O'Donnell and Mary Dague, thank you for talking to me about this project. And Tim, as it rolls out in the world, keep us informed of the Impact campaign, keep us informed of the festivals it's going to be on. We'll make sure that listeners of this podcast and FC members and people in the FC network are aware of it. Thank you both for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.